Hello and welcome to episode 5 of Heroic Stats. My name is Stephen. I'm here with Elliot Loves Rohan, Dave,
Woo!
our competitive legitimacy, and our first repeat guest and still our first actual guest, Will Champion of Seventh City.
We're back,
He's
baby. I'm
back.
gone. I'm back.
We're back.
He's back! He's back! Voldemort's back!
What we doing today? Today we're having a little look at the tournaments from the last weekend. The usual. We had 2 tournaments in total. Spoilers on the left, one with Seventh City, one with Factorum. And yeah, so that's what we're going to go through today. Firstly, hobby projects. This is the part of the podcast that I have 0 to contribute to. My current hobby project is I have a single wood elf with wood elf spear that I need to paint for this weekend. So I've got 3 days to do that. I hope I can get it done. I've got contrast paints, so
It's quite a tight deadline for you.
yeah. I mean, I've painted 1,600 points worth of models in 10 days before.
Do it again.
Fuck it, I'll do it again. Elliot, have you done anything in the last week?
Yeah, I have actually. I've painted Durin.
Oh yeah, this is for your
the
Durin
Khazad-dûm.
and Mardin
The Durin
Khazad-dûm
Mardin
force.
Dream Team. I'm gonna make it work.
Yeah, lovely.
He's cooking.
That's what
I'm
we like to see.
cooking.
Mardin's famously brilliant.
Yeah,
Yes.
we all love Mardin.
It's exactly what I have to take in.
Dave, anything for you on the hobby perspective?
I finished off the foot version of Faramir for completion's sake, for my Rangers of Ithilien, which I was, I guess, hinting at the other episodes. I didn't actually fess it up because I'm a coward who doesn't like to say what his armies are ahead of time. But yeah, I think I might. It's possible we'll see it come out again at other points levels. I'm going to tinker with it, but I think 600 is something of a sweet spot. So might be on the low down for a while.
Yeah, I mean, I think in a shooting meta, obviously, it does quite well. So we'll hopefully we don't see too much of it though, because it's bit of a negative play experience, some might say.
Yeah, that'll come up later maybe, but yeah.
Maybe. Will, any hobbying for you? I know you've had a very busy week, so we'll forgive you if not.
Yeah, I've still managed to find time to do a little bit of tinkering. So I've painted up some goblins for an upcoming doubles tournament and some tiny tanks for Legions Imperialis as well.
Oh,
lovely.
nice. Oh, that's the doubles tournament, Defense of the North in Bristol.
It is.
Keep your eyes peeled and ears peeled, listeners, because we might have a exclusive on that one coming out soon.
Gosh.
Ooh.
How
Very
exciting.
cheeky, very cheeky.
Oh, you're coming down to Bristol then, Will?
I am, yeah.
You're
I mean,
partnering up with Mr. Wiggins.
I am. Someone's got to carry him, so.
Yeah,
Wiggledy piggledy. Well,
maybe he'll podium a GBHL for the first time in
I mean, it's a slightly weird thing to say in a while, but he definitely has podiumed at a GBHL.
No, lovely guy. I'm just flaming him for no reason.
Yeah, well, anyone in the Southern chat will know that Stephen and Wiggins have little slap fights from time to time.
It's really cute.
It is
Yeah.
cute, yeah,
A little romance blossoming.
very
Yeah,
much so, yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, I mean, with Danny and Clubly hosting it, there's going to be no Southwest Stompers to take it away, so it's a wide open field, I would say.
Exactly. Yeah. Wide open for me and Elliot, low alpha steam to take the field. And on that note,
let's get out of here.
let's move on to the events of the weekend just gone. First of all, we had, well, not first of all technically, but first of all for a listener perspective, we had a doubles tournament at Factorum in Warminster. This was called Frodo Couldn't Have Done It Alone. And the TO was Alex Cullen. The format was 800 points, 3 games. Now, Factorum, not many people will have heard of it, but great venue. Really like, there's just this vibe to it where it's got like swords and board games and helmets and like all these cool historical stuff on the wall. And me and Elliot, it holds a special place in our hearts because it's some of the first ever SBG tournaments we won at Factorum.
It's a sick venue.
It is a sick venue. Some very complicated and potentially irritating, but beautiful boards is what I would say about it.
Yes, the Osciliath board.
Yeah,
sure.
there's an Osgiliath board which is very dense, and please don't have cavalry if you're playing on it. So for the people who went, the most sporting was Jack Blythe and Eric. I'm going to butcher your surname, Peotto.
Sounds
Maybe
like a Pokemon.
I was going to say, is that Pidgeotto, but not. And best painted was Richard Croydon and Simon Rafferty. They had a cheeky little Mordor alliance going on, which we'll get to in a moment. Third place was James Patterson and Joe Gonzalez. Second place was Tom Patterson and Jordan Riley. Shout out Atomic Cards. And first place, well, we'll get to them in a second. First of all, though, let's have a quick look at the, unfortunately very limited, but the best painted with some lovely third-party minis. So those are some Blackguard and a Mordor Troll Chieftain. It's quite sick looking.
It is beautiful. Looks a little small for 800 points, but stunning nonetheless.
There's a fella behind the wall there.
Yeah, there's Suladan. Unfortunately, we were limited on getting photos for this one. I will confess it's entirely my neglect from being at another tournament. Spoilers for later on. But yeah, I really do enjoy this troll model. It's quite cool when people just put a little bit of extra character into their models, whether it's 3D prints or not. You know, you can look at it and go, yes, that is a troll chieftain. Yes, those are Blackguard of Barad-dûr.
Yes, that is an
have
orange
bigger
dice.
shields. It is an orange dice. That's true.
Those shields are about they're about a third of the size they should be. But
maybe that's more accurate for the profile they actually have rather than the model.
Yeah.
Anyway,
and you can see a photo of Factorum in on the right hand side. Also, the Tio Alex, lovely guy, very friendly chap. Was chatting to him the other day. Just a wonderful host. But moving on to, and we're only looking at the first place list for this one. You'll see why when we get to the GP section. First place list was Dan Klubley and Dave Hawkins, cutest couplet in the Southwest. Now, to a fluffy GBHL 80, they took Assault on Lothlorien.
the
Scumbags.
absolute scumbags.
But wait a
Deviant.
second. What's this? It's a
the
full
old-
spider list.
The old 29 models.
Total bamboozle.
That's beautiful.
So for those audio listeners, of course, Assault on Lothlorien, you look at it and you think, bows, goblins, being shot in the dark. What they've got here is they've got Musgur, 2 Warg Riders with banner, both with shield, 1 with throwing spears, a Bat Swarm, Ashrak, 10 Venomback spiders. I think they might just be spiders. I'm not entirely sure.
No, they are Venombacks.
They are Venombacks.
Yeah,
Druzag,
you have it for free.
with a Bat Swarm and 12 standard giant spiders, I believe.
They'll be also Venombacks.
Are they all Venombacks in this list?
Yeah, if you take Ashrak, all of them become Venombacks for free as part of the list.
And that's why we have Dave on the podcast, everybody.
Because you don't read the rules before you talk about them.
Well, my book was upstairs and I was making the PowerPoint earlier.
Yeah, this is correct.
This is
It's a banger.
This is an absolute banger.
And they won with it, so fair fucks to them.
I was messaging Mr. Hawkins earlier, and he was saying that the list was really fun, and they got to do the things they wanted to, and they were very fortunate in avoiding those matchups they didn't want. Because at 800 points, having 22 D3 models, albeit 2 wound D3 models, quite squishy, shall we say?
Yeah. I mean, 2 wounds helps a lot, actually. Fight 4. Courage is good because Druzag is there.
Yeah.
You got some tricks. I mean, admittedly, I think this is probably fairly unsubtle, but I mean, hey, clearly it did all right. I'd be interested to see what scenarios they played, to be honest.
Yeah. It's
I think one thing that plays the the advantage of this sort of list is because everything like in the army has the ability to be powered up. It's really hard for your opponent to know what, for you to telegraph what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And just having the option to throw a spell out of left field at something they weren't expecting is actually pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Especially with the potential terrain that they might have got at Factorum. It could be actually having swift
Yeah,
movement
that is
might have
very
been
true.
really good. To be fair,
A
so
lot of forest terrain, huh?
a lot of forest terrain, just a
Sort
lot
of
of
everything terrain.
a lot of everything terrain, a lot of stuff
Right.
you might want vertical movement for. Um,
Okay.
so yeah, it's a really interesting list and
What
lovely to see it because
what I
the
will
sec.
say is,
Oh,
sorry, no, that probably plays into like the gameplay fantasy, as it were, of AOL properly, like degenerate spider horde storming Lothlorien
yeah,
and
no,
a couple of goblins at the back just waving their arms around.
Are you suggesting, Dave, that this is in fact an incredibly fluffy list?
I think so.
I think this version of the
I
list is
love it. To be fair, I
definitely.
think it's brilliant.
Yeah, this is really cool. I like it when people take a list like this and they subvert your expectations entirely.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, beautiful. But moving on from the cutest couple in the Southwest, 7th City Middle-earth Grand Prix 2024 GBHL 100, hosted by 7th City Collectables in the lovely Derbyshire countryside. The tournament organizer was William Champignon. 92 players in total, or at least 92 people who made the event. I know it was a capacity of 100 initially. 600 points with 7 games. Day one was 4 games with Monrad Swiss. So for anyone unfamiliar, first game would be random, and then first and second would pair, third and fourth would pair, fifth and sixth would pair. There were definitely no redraws from people pointing out that first and second weren't paired. Day two was then seeded into pods based on the end of day one position. So the top 8 were seeded to compete for the top 8 positions, and then it was split into 16 groups of 16 players at a time for the remaining pods, who were all competing for their own prizes, which I think a lot of people really enjoyed, having the opportunity to, you get through day one and you haven't done as well necessarily as you would have liked to have done. Maybe you've won 2 games, maybe you only won 1, but you're then competing with people who are on a similar level of kind of winningness, shall we say. And there's still everything to play for, because there were 2 tickets to next year's event for the top 2 of the Chaser pod. There was a ticket for everyone in the top 8. It was a lot of prize support. It was nice to see.
It's big.
And of course, having 7th City as the hosts, obviously Will, that's what we've got here. There was a lot of out of production minis for sale. It was just a really good time.
It was very fun watching hobbyist goblins crawling around a pile of miniatures, boxes of stuff, and picking them up. I was standing with some of the other guys, and several people coming to me and be like, "What's this?" And I'm like, "Oh, it's the Dwemer Lake." And they're like, "What's this?" And like, "That's a wild chieftain you've got there, sport." It's just a good vibe. I love rooting through that sort of thing.
It's almost
Secondhand
like you're like the
minis.
Antiques Roadshow expert.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Value this.
You can
deem this
expect
to
to
be worth.
find anywhere from between 25,000
Yeah, exactly.
and 35,000 for this.
Yeah, no, it was a good time. I love that stuff. Like it's fun because by the time we were looking at it, it was the Saturday night, and spoilers, I won all my games day one, so I was sort of wish listing, fantasizing about what I might spend some store credit on if things went my way. Spoilers, they didn't quite go the way I wanted, but still happy to pick up a free ticket nonetheless. I think
that must have been nice, right, Dave?
It's a lovely
real
return on
motivator.
investment, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. I bought a ticket about 2 years ago.
I haven't had to pay for one since.
No, that's not
I
quite
think
right.
one of our favorite things, and this is going to sound a bit weird about the venue and the event, was having our hotel room literally a 5 to 10 second walk from where we were playing our games.
Yeah.
So if our game finished early, we'd go and have a half-hour lie down. We had our own private bathroom because it was in our hotel room. It was quite a novel experience. That
it was nice. Yeah, like one of my rounds finished comically early, and then I could go and have a lie down rather than so awkwardly loitering around all the tables for the whole time,
Yeah.
which is fun.
No. If you haven't been to a GP yet, go to next year's. I'm telling you, go to next year's.
Yeah, it'd be fun.
Nice to see some fresh faces there, rather than us old bitter veterans. But onto the prizes and the lists. Most sporting, Richard Ancliffe. I hope I'm pronouncing your surname right. And best painted, a name we've heard before actually, with maybe a similar army, was Dan Stewart from Drawn Combat Blog. We'll just come on to that.
Yeah, now this may or may not have been an expanded form of the same army that won Best Army at Into the West.
Yes.
And you can definitely see why, because holy shit, what a great job.
The level of detail.
It's awesome, isn't it?
Yeah.
Absolutely awesome.
I can't help but vote for it again, really. Like, I just love the canned guys converted.
Yeah,
I love-
and the War Priest with the blade scythe.
Yeah,
Lovely.
and Rutabi, just wonderful stuff. Well done.
Yeah.
Fantastic job, Dan. And
Yeah.
there's the picture of the Howdah. If you get a chance to find this, if you're listening and you don't have the video for this, I recommend finding a picture of this because it's fantastic.
It's absolutely gorgeous work. As I say, we've already celebrated the work on the podcast, but it really is worth the look. And he said he'd been working on this for an age, just like cracking on with it every weekend and whatnot. So
this must be very validating for him. I'm
Yeah.
interested to know if the Howdah, which appears to be made out of the same stuff as the Dragon Emperor's
I was just thinking that.
thing. I wonder if that's actually from a Dragon Emperor, in which case that's stellar commitment, or if he's somehow managed to recreate it, which I think might even be more impressive. I don't know.
I wonder if it's made from a spare Dragon Emperor that was miscast.
Or maybe it's that maybe someone's mocked up some STLs that are the same stuff. But I mean, if that
maybe.
is the case, then fair play to them because that looks amazing.
Yeah.
Either way, it's great, isn't it? I've seen this army a couple of times, and it's sort of grown over time. Because I know he's also got some Candice chariots that have got like Easterlings riding them instead. Like he's got an immaculate project that sort of spans quite a lot of the model range, and it all looks just as good as this does.
I think that Great Beast is a phenomenal centerpiece, and I really appreciate that. Well, like you were saying, sometimes over the course of one of the slightly strange things that happens at this hobby is when you go to a lot of tournaments in a year, you'll see the same armies, but you'll see them sort of grow and mutate, and it's just fascinating, especially with a project as good as this. Obviously, many armies are not as good as this, but anything that's great, you're just super excited to see someone who's added a few more bits, new conversions, new amazing paint jobs. I think it's a really underrated aspect of the continuity that comes from going to a lot of tournaments.
Yeah, no, absolutely gorgeous work. But anyway, onto the top 8 lists.
Let's go.
Not the top 3 lists. That's right, top 8 lists.
Oh boy!
So this would be all the people who got into the top pod after the end of day 1.
Yep.
So first of all, oh, you're going to say?
I was just going to say, I think there were. I think it was mostly people on 4 wins. There may have been some people on a draw. There was 2 people who got a loss. I know that. Similar to last year. There was
1 person on a draw.
Yeah,
2 people on 3 losses.
It was quite a drawy day 1, with the nature of the scenarios that got rolled up. Because normally you would expect from that many players to have about 6 people on 4 wins, and then it would be 2, 3 in a draws. But because quite a few people ended up sort of cancelling out with the draws, it was a bit of a wider top 8 than it would statistically be.
All right.
But rounding off the bottom of the top pod was Shen Long, who I believe is a listener or watcher. So shout out Shen. Both Dave and I did have the pleasure of playing him as well. So nice to see him as well. His list was Suladan, Serpent Lord with Armored Horse.
So we're talking about the poison arrows.
We're no poison arrows. 6 Haradrim Warrior with bow and spear, 3 Haradrim Warrior with bow, 2 Serpent Guard, 3 Serpent Rider, a Watcher of Kana with bow, 3 Merchant Guard, Raza, 2 Serpent Guard, a Mahud King with War Camel Spear, War Spear and Shield, and 6 Mahud Warrior with Blowpipe and Spear, and 2 Mahud Raider with Blowpipe and War Spear, and 2 Half Trials. So rounding out at 33 models with 8 might, 10 bows, and 8 blowpipes. Now, I think a lot of people were having the same thought about this list, that you're taking Serpent Horde but haven't necessarily maximized your capacity for bows, or what you could do with the list, as it were.
Yeah, I would say that's a fair assessment.
It's a real mixed bag, isn't it? What I do like about this list is it is the fact that it can fight as well as it can shoot, and he's kind of compromised one to get a more all-rounder list, which will have suffered in certain games against certain matchups, but then in other ones where he's had to scrap a lot more, he's probably set himself up quite well. I know that he's come last in the top 8, but that's no small feat with the field that was there and the amount of experienced players too. And I know that he was absolutely thrilled with that result. I got to have a little chat with him after the event was done, and he's relatively new to the game. He hasn't been to a huge amount of events, and so he was like absolutely over the moon with how he performed. And the list can slap. You've got some half trolls in there. You've got some of the African Merchant Guard, which I think are like one of the best profiles in the game. You just can't get the models nowadays. It's a real catch-all list. I really rate it, to be fair.
Yeah,
and you've still got 80 shots, haven't you?
Yeah, he did say when we were playing, I think he played like 3 games of this list before using it, which I think this isn't one of those lists you can just plug and play. I think there's a little bit more nuance to it.
Absolutely not.
So
yeah, I would agree.
Very well done for getting to the top pod.
If he starts going to more events, he could well be one to watch for sure.
It's deceptively a greater courage this list is as well when it's broken, because you've got just extremely good coverage on high courage models, which in Evil is quite rare. So I mean, you've got Suladan's courage 5 with a 12-inch standfast. Raz's he's Swarm Protector, which is even rarer in Evil. In fact, I don't think there is anything else that has it in Evil.
I didn't even know he had that, to be fair.
Yeah, people forget it a lot. But he's got Swarm Protector Suladan, and then the Mahud King also gives the Mahud Warriors. So he's courage 5, and then the army bonus from the Mahud half means that if he's fighting, he either gets a standfast, or if he's fighting 6-inch, they get auto passing courage as well, which is awesome. It just it doesn't actually have a problem with that. So unlike a lot of Evil lists where having 33 models might be an issue, this one actually slugs it out pretty well once it's broken. Having said that, it's 33 models, and like 2/3 of it, is D4, roughly speaking. And
yeah,
a list like the one my list, which is the one after this one, will absolutely take it to pieces, which is what happened when we played.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a fair assessment. It'll stick around courage wise, but it is deceptively fragile due to its defense.
Yeah.
I
almost feel like you ought to have more half trolls or less half trolls as well. Two is
more or
strange.
fewer.
Yeah, exactly. I like a good chunk of half trolls, and then you can sort of play around that and keep your squishy stuff safer. Or I like no half trolls for a list like this.
I think if you are going to invest in the half trolls, you have to. You can't really do it half-heartedly. If you get a proper solid full line of them, they absolutely just mince through everything.
They do, yeah. They're essentially Urukai captains.
Yeah.
For 23 points?
That's 22, I think.
I don't remember.
23 with the two-handed weapon.
Oh, sure. Okay, which you probably wouldn't bother with.
Yeah, at strength 5 2 attacks, it's a bit unnecessary to two-hand, maybe.
No, you pay that 1 point and give them an axe instead, and then they're real spicy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's
true.
pretty chunky. True. I mean, strength 6 on troops. I agree with that call. That's a very good call.
Pro tip.
So, moving on to the 7th place list.
Whoa!
It's David Farmy. David Farmy? Sorry.
Farmy.
How do you pronounce that name? Apologies if the bottom of the slides or the sides of the slides are being cut off. Our intern is currently on an unpaid vacation, so I'm not entirely sure where our camera feeds are going to be showing up, if they're going to be showing up at all. So 7th place, David Farmer. We've got Rangers of Athelion at 600 points. Got
Yeah.
Faramir, Captain of Gondor with horse and bow. 6 rangers with spear. We've got Frodo with mithril coat, sting, and elven cloak. Sam with elven cloak, and Smeagol, not Gollum. Warband 3 is Madril, 6 rangers with spear. And Warband 4 is Mablung, 3 rangers of Gondor and 3 rangers of Gondor with spear. 36
Ooh.
models, 12 might, and 33. Oh, beg your pardon, 33 bows.
Yep. I like this list, but I
Yeah.
don't love it.
I hate this list. It's miserable.
Yeah,
I
I
think it's
mean,
really nice and themey, Dave.
thanks, mate. I mean, it is nice and themey, but that's sort of not really the issue. The problem with this list is strength 2 shooting. I picked it because I anticipated Hunter Orcs being popular at the event, which they were. There was, I think, 12 players running
Yeah.
them. There, I anticipated Lake Town Guard being popular after they had something of a crazy renaissance at what was it, Into the West, and this tournament had essentially confirmed there was going to be no contest of champions, which is like the one thing that a Lake Town Guard player is most afraid of having to play. So that being off the table on day 1, because we drew the 4 scenarios ahead of time, and obviously veto means it's off the table day 2, so you're never going to pick it. You basically have the freedom to run a man spam bow heavy, list like that. Yeah, so those were the things that I was anticipating making up a large chunk. And also Harad is popular, which is again a majoritively D4 army. So I thought this would be a good shot, and I felt like I was somewhat vindicated with the day 1 performance. I did, exactly what I was hoping to do day 1. But then, unfortunately for me, day 2, I matched into another list we'll see later, but another shooting list at a bad scenario with high defense. And that's when the problems of this list come into focus, because you need to outshoot, but to do that, you need to roll 6s to wound. And if you don't do it, it's just, what you're going to do. There's no magical cure to not rolling 6s to wound. Like, you just have to do it. And if you don't, then it's a problem.
I think the way you put this, you played a practice game against John, and you said it several times following that this list absolutely shags D4.
Yeah.
Which I can attest to, because I played this in game 4 on day 1 and got shot off the board in 3 turns. So yeah, it was definitely a meta call by yourself. Unfortunately, the other lists in the top 8 pod were also majority meta calls, and anything D5 plus, as you said, really
it's funny
struggles.
that, isn't it? It's just anything that gets solid numbers and D5. I mean, like, it was close. I would have backed myself against some of the other armies, but the ones I had to play, unfortunately, were not the ones that I had a good matchup. But yeah, for me, I think the scenario that this one's has some really bad scenarios, and actually that's a big problem.
Yeah, any scenario where you can't leverage your shooting advantage, you're immediately at a disadvantage, because your entire army is max D5, with the majority of it obviously being D4. Oh, sorry, Frodo. Yeah, Frodo, of course.
Frodo's D6.
Every single one of your troops is D4, and will just absolutely shit the bed if they lose combat.
Yeah, there's no banner, which means that
you
need to shoot things into a position where you outnumber them and can wrap and play properly, or leverage Faramir's mediocre hitting power on a horse, which is not insignificant, but it's not good either. He's not very strong. For me, Mablung, my initial thinking with taking Mablung was, if there's going to be like barriers and stuff, he gives you a Stalk Unseen, so you can have the option of playing a shooting war against an army that has, for example, crossbows. You could theoretically deploy behind a wall and just be immune to retaliation, so you can get the extra shooting you need to even the odds. Unfortunately, this event didn't happen to have many barriers, like barrier style. Obviously, it can work with all terrain, but barriers are by far the best thing for it. And I didn't really have any of those, unfortunately. So here's what it is. I think Anborn would have been better, but in my experience, Anborn doesn't do a whole lot, but it is a good rule.
So this list shoot good.
Yep, it does shoot very good.
And enough said about this one then. Should we move on?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Will, any comments?
I mean, I backed it to get into the top 8, which it did. And then I think if it got the right run of scenarios, it could have gone to the end. The matchup against GBHL, I know we're going to come on to his list. Like, it could have gone either way, and I think you hit the nail on the head. It came down to a game of sixes. But yeah, I think you were unfortunate to get 7th, given how well day one went. I'd have backed you to have won the event. But sometimes the matchups just don't go your way, do they?
Yeah, I'd have preferred playing Ed's list or Jakob's list than the ones I ended up playing, I think. But here's what it is. There's no problem with that. We move.
Lovely. So we'll move on to a sea shanty list. 6th place, Sam Grattan. Warband 1 is Dalamir, Fleetmaster of Umbar. 6 Corsairs with Shield and Spear, 6 Arbalesters, and 6 Black Numenorians. Corsair Captain with Crossbow, 4 Corsairs with Shield and Spear, 4 more Arbalesters, and 4 Black Numenorians. And then a allied contingent of Serpent Horde with everyone's favourite banner, Suladan, on Armoured Horse. 3 Haradrim Warrior with Spear, a Haradrim Raider with Bow and War Spear, and 2 Serpent Riders, for a total of 39 models, 8 might, and 11 bows, with also some throwing weapons in the mix.
That has 12 bows, I'm pretty sure. He's got a crossbow on the captain. Speaking of bows, though, what I would say is I don't know why he hasn't taken max bows in the Harad contingent of this, because he totally could have another 2 bows. Not that it matters that much, but like if you're going to have Harad allies, they have cheap archers. I don't know why you wouldn't take them. I don't think it changes. I don't think it really changes how this list plays at all, but like,
I'll confess I copied the 11 bows from his Longshanks listing.
Right.
So yeah, it doesn't list a hero bow, so my bad.
Yeah, that's okay.
I have to say regarding this list, I was on Gollum's Gamers in the preview. We sort of ranked their list as we went through, and I did say that this was a good list, but I felt it would have been better. You could still ally Suladan in, but just going like pure Corsairs and really hoarding it out. I think the strength of the list is capitalizing on the backstabbers and getting as many crossbows and throwing weapons in as you can. But to make the top 8 and hit 6th place, he clearly did well with his list. So fair play to him.
I think it's a comfortable list for him, right?
I slightly remember him saying something along the lines of an Arbalester is the same points as a Numenorian or 1 point cheaper.
It's Corsairs with Spear and Shield are the same cost as Black Numenorians, which is the thing.
That's the one.
But the front rank, I mean, it changes it into a completely different list. But like because you're playing around the throwing daggers more, and the backstabbers and whereas this is more akin to a normal list. May or may not be playing into the true strength of the army. If I'm honest, I've always kind of wanted to play Corsairs, but then the idea of having to paint up a bunch more in the really obnoxious paint scheme that I came up with years ago is just I can't be asked. So it's probably never going to happen.
They're also the plastic kit is really suffering with age as well, isn't it? It's not the most inspiring models to paint.
Yeah, that's true.
There's the really clunky sword and shield guy that's got like no neck.
Yes.
And,
he looks like a goblin.
Yeah, I remember when I was painting those up. I think when I got onto my 5th version of him, and I was like, I don't think I can do this anymore.
Yeah. It's like some of the Morannon Orc sculpts. It literally looks like someone made the model and then melted it a little bit and then was like, that'll do as the mold, that'll do.
Mr. Potato Head.
Mr. Steal Your Girl, I call him.
Any further comments about this list? It's got some good range threat. It's got pretty good numbers. I mean, it's not. I agree with the sentiment of it not really maximizing the advantage of the backstabbers, but he's still come in the top 6 out of 92. So
he's very comfortable with Corsairs.
I would say yes. Yeah, it is one of his known favored pieces, as it were, in his slightly
I guess this is another list similar to Shen's, where it's kind of a bit more of an all-rounder as opposed to speccing into like one thing that it does very well.
Yeah.
I think that's a valid tactic. It's like the opposite of the thing that I did, which is to spec into one thing, that doing one thing extremely well that maybe doesn't work in all scenarios.
Yeah.
Which is something I'm trying to do more of this year. In previous years, I've defaulted to all rounders a lot. And I think maybe getting a bit wild, getting a bit wiki weird could be better. So what I'm saying is, Sam, more crossbows, less of these black Numenorians, please.
Fewer.
Yeah.
And
AMOPM.
let's move on to the 5th place list. 5th place, Ben Haslam, with what I would potentially describe as the simplest list at the GP. It's Army of Thrall. We've got Thrall, 15 Guardians of the King. That's the Strength 4 version of the Grimhammers. He's got 3 Warriors of Erebor with Shield and Spear. And then he's got a Captain of Erebor with 7 Warriors of Erebor with Spear and Shield. And a Captain of Erebor with 8 Warriors of Erebor with Spear and Shield. Total of 36 models, 8 might, 15 throwing weapons. Now, this is a list where if you had Rangers of Ithilien and you were looking into it, you'd probably cry a little bit.
I mean, not necessarily. It depends what the scenario was. So what Stephen is alluding to here is the fact that I lost to Ben Haslam at Recon in the second game on the Sunday, which was it would have been the 7-6 playoff. Basically, winner plays 5-6, loser plays 7-8. It was Recon. And it was a funny game. Ended up being a 1-0 loss because Ben did a wound to Faramir with a couple of throwing axes that I couldn't save with his fate. And essentially we both sort of skirted around each other, killed a few of each other's models, but unfortunately the same exact number, which meant that we got the same exact number of models off the board, and he ended up winning based off of a single Faramir wound, which is funny, but also a little bit sad if you're me. 6s by 4s to shoot is a tricky mistress, and you're hoping for even more luck than you normally hope for with that list. But yeah. I don't mind it at all because Ben's a gent, and by that point we were already out of contention for podiums anyway. So it's like, well, I mean, who cares? You might as well have a silly game with a good dude than something too sweaty, right?
Absolutely. And this was another list that I backed to do pretty well. Again, it's just a really good meta call. It like completely negs like a Hunter Orc build, because it just, you know, Hunter Orcs famously cannot kill dwarves, as 3 films would show you. And it it just does the basics really well. It's relatively speedy because it's got a lot of heroic march, and you just can't kill it. The only problem it has is it doesn't have too much table control, which is where Ben being in 5th place also came unstuck to, I believe, the 3rd place list, because it can't really dictate where the fighting is going to happen. And as you said, with your bow heavy list, obviously 6s by 4s aren't great, but in a scenario where you get to dictate the table, you might have had a little bit more luck. But when there's 36 dwarfs charging up the table at you, if you don't roll 6s by 4s and he's just trying to get off the table, he doesn't even really want to fight you. It's a pretty uphill battle.
Yeah, I mean, the really enjoyable thing about it was knowing that we both really knew clearly what was going on, and we never even said it until the game was already over, like, which is quite nice. It's a real sort of benefit of having like a nice top end game when everyone knows exactly what the stakes are and no one even has to discuss them. Also, this only has 7 might, not 8.
I can't count.
Guess not.
At least you tried.
I'm leaving that as a dangling error for someone to make a comment on, so we can
It's a bit late
engage our viewership. Yeah,
I've called it out myself now.
Elliot, give me a hot take on this list.
Dwarves walk, kill things, don't die.
Yeah, that's how I feel about it.
I think probably the biggest issue with it is it doesn't have any of the saucy dwarves that have +1 to wound. Like this, if you don't roll well, could bounce off D7 pretty badly. For example, if you had like a D7 hero you needed to kill, it doesn't really have a way to crack a hero. It just has guys Actually, I guess Grim Hammers can piercing strike, don't they? They've got the pick hammer things.
I did say to Ben, like, I'd have really liked to have seen Thrain instead of Thror, because I just think he's an absolute monster. But he said that the 6-inch banner
Yeah.
is essentially a net positive, and the Arkenstone as well. If it does roll up, it means your general's probably not going anywhere.
Yeah, it means you can't really afford to focus Thor down unless you have an extremely advantageous way of doing it, like a strength 5 plus 1 to wound or something, like a
Yeah,
like a Shelob maybe could do it, but
yeah, like a Shelob or a Dane or something like that.
yeah, exactly, or like Helm Hammerhand maybe. Yeah, it's a good list. I would have loved to see this play against the Chariots because that would have been very funny. They'd have just bounced off.
Oh yeah, that would have been crazy.
Chariots? I don't know what you mean.
Spoilers.
Moving on to 4th place. Oh, there we go. 4th place, Matthew Light with his tried and tested Dragon Emperor Legion, as in host of the Dragon Emperor. So Warband 1, Dragon Emperor of Rune with 6 black dragons with pike and shield, and a Cataphract with war drum and axe. Warband 2 is a Dragon Knight with 2 black dragons with pike and shield, and a Cataphract with swapped weapon axe, black dragon Cataphract of course, and a Dragon Cult Acolyte with axe. And then Warband 3 is Eastling Captain with 11 Eastling Warriors with shield and 1 with bow. So 36 models, 7 might, 1 bow, and a throwing weapon. Now, one thing I noticed when putting this list together is if he wanted to, by swapping 3 models out of the Eastling Captain Warband, he could pop some additional black dragons in there. So he could get a bit more fight 5 if he wanted. Now, I don't know how relevant that is for the warband spacing. I've never played the Legion myself, but it is just one of those options that he could do.
My assumption as why he's not done that is for the simple reason of he probably was intending to say, all right, all the guys with shield are not black dragons and all the guys with pikes and shield are black dragons, and that is easier than saying these 2 guys are also black dragons. I'll hang little loom bands on it. It's just, it's less dignified. Having said that, I would probably have made that Eastling Warrior with bow a black dragon just because it's the only one and you can sit him on back objectives with better courage. And it's for free if you put it in the Dragon Knight Warband or the Emperor Warband. But I don't know what his logic was there. I guess he probably just didn't think it was that important, which is probably correct.
Yeah, I think it was likely a quality of life choice, as you said.
Yeah, just something to keep your brain on straight, which is, as I've spoken to Ali about his theory behind the triple Dragon Knight or double Dragon Knight inclusions, is it means that you don't have to do anything like that. You can just say they're all black dragons. Everything's a black dragon.
It's free real estate.
It's just nice. Why not? Which is why when he plays Rutabi, he has all of the acolytes in Rutabi's warband and nothing else, which is funny.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I've seen lots of different ways of doing the black dragon thing. Obviously, there are technically official black dragon models, which are exorbitantly expensive, and if you buy those, consider donating to charity or something. I don't know. That's not me targeting anyone in specific. It's just significant price difference in models for things that are basically the same. I know some people will paint the outline of the base black, but from personal experience from the weekend, that makes it really difficult to work out what's a black dragon when everything's a base to base.
I've seen worse methods of discovering what's a black dragon or not. There was a fellow in Northern Ireland which he had anything that had an official Easterling pike, which is like a specific end, was a black dragon, and any of them that had a different kind of pike was not a black dragon. And it's like, it's visual, but it's not that easy to see it, really. I wasn't a fan of that.
Not when there's a phalanx of 40 models there.
Yeah, exactly. It's a bit, especially when they're all backing off in weird directions because of how the phalanx special rule works. It's like, oh God, kill me. I'm just going to assume they're all 5/5.
Yeah, that's what I did. I mean, there's not really much to say about this list.
Nope.
From my view, it's Matt Light bringing his tried and tested Dragon Knight. It is his favorite little tech piece.
I think the fact that he's gone with the Eastern Captain must have been a call on the fact that we were playing Hold Ground and Recon day one, because also it's good for Lords of Battle because you can close the gap onto things that scare you. But drum marching, 12-inch move for your infantry block is big. That'll be the logic there, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, can't wait to see this get nerfed next week. Maybe. Who knows?
Wouldn't that be nice?
Anyway, moving on to the third place list. Elliot, you've been quite
Yes.
quiet.
Oh,
This is what you're here for.
this is what I'm here for.
Firstly, shout out Ed. He's been playing Vanquishers and
Black Riders.
Black Riders
And Bears.
and Bears and all hero lists for a very long time, and some would call them nastier lists. Ed, lovely to see you playing this, and I think he actually enjoyed it as far as I could tell on the weekend. So nice to see that. He was playing Riders of Theoden, which personally I think is a list, if you see across the table, you know it's going to be a good, fun game. Like 95% of the time, you're like, yeah, this is a good. This, no matter what happens, something's going to happen. Theoden will roll a 1 at some point, fall off his horse. Banter.
Absolutely.
Elliot, run through this list for me.
Sure. So obviously got Theoden on horse, all the gubbins. He's got 3 Royal Guard with him with Throwing Spear. And we've got the man himself, Gambling, my favourite model in the game. With the Royal Standard, another Royal Guard on horse. We've got Daywine, Royal Guard with Throwing Spear, Dernhelm, Royal Guard with Throwing Spear. And then we've got 2 Captains of Rohan bringing it around. So we've got 13 models. Well, I assume we've asterisked that because of Dernhelm. 16 might, and then 6 throwing spears. And it's good to see. There was quite a few Riders Theodens at the tournament, actually, and it's good to see. And to be honest, I think you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I actually think it goes really well into Hunter Orcs.
Yeah.
It absolutely steamrolls them.
It will totally run a train on them. Like everything being strength 4, strength 5 when you charge.
Like in one round of death,
it's just lit, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just lit.
This was one of my meta picks at the end of 2023 that I expected to see do quite well because it goes into Hunter Orcs really well. It goes into Dwarves really well. Iron Hills was starting to see a bit of a spike back last year, and obviously having pretty much your entire army charge in and be strength 5 is all you really need to do against Dwarves. And it also has a reasonable shout into the Suladan Witch King style list as well, because if you can survive long enough to get there and blast away the Black Numenorians, there's not really much left to stop you. So I feel vindicated, and to see it doing well. It's all hero plus, isn't it? Which gives you nice objective play without having to waste an expensive model. The captains get to piercing strike up to strength 6 on the charge, which is delicious. It's just excellent, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really good.
I think basically I was looking at this and I was like, why wouldn't you just drop the shields on the captains, Dernhelm throwing spears, and have another Royal Guard? I don't think it really matters, but you could totally have another one. But I mean,
yeah,
sometimes...
I wouldn't have bothered with the throwing spears at all. I'm of a similar mind to you. I think the throwing spears are a waste of time, but I think in his game against Ben Haslam, which was essentially what I warned Ben against. Essentially, you've got nothing to stop Rohan dictating exactly when they hit you. But I think in their game, he hid some dwarfs in the woods, and the throwing spears killed all 3 of them. So that's me back in my box.
Yeah, I don't think you don't want none. It's like you need some sort of skirmishing potential, I think, if you do get those kinds of matchups, just to basically go, if you want to play the long game, I'm just going to run around you and shoot. It just gives it that sort of balance.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, that's why I would say dropping because I mean, on the hero, obviously, actually, what I would say is Dernhelm throwing spears is a little bit more appealing than other heroes, just because you get that free might tech from the Merry. You can use Merry's might to bump up a 5 to a 6 for a kill and then not waste it. If you're playing a really long skirmishy game, I do see the appeal of that. So fair enough. It's like having a budget elf helm essentially without having to have all the other baggage that elf helm brings, which is to say being 5/4.
Courage 4.
I don't think Courage 4 is a problem for elf helm, but he's not what you take in a list like this, because this list is all about having 5/5 heroes everywhere. That's why they're all the 5/5 guys. Apart from Gamling, again, because he has the banner. the banner of Make Be Mighty good.
What I will say is his semi-final game against GBHL was absolutely epic to watch, and it was really tight until the end, and it all sort of came unstuck for Ed. But it was a very satisfying game of Storm the Camp to watch. It was pretty awesome.
Satisfying game of Storm the Camp is not a common phrase either.
I know. Well, this is it. That really sort of shows just how good the game actually was.
Having said that, I mean, my game against Jay was good. That was a great game. And then I think his final game in the final was absolutely insane.
An all-timer.
An absolute nutty finish to that one. We'll get to in a minute.
Lovely. So yeah, big fan of this list.
Good to see it doing well.
Yeah, nice to see it doing well. So moving on to the second place list. We've already mentioned his name. It's Mr. Acharya. It's the year of the Acharya.
There he
may
is,
well
pictured
be.
on the right.
There he is pictured on the right. He's had a haircut since then. He has his pure Isengard list with his trusty crossbow and pike spam. So he's got alerts with shield, 6 Uruk warriors with crossbow, 7 with pike, a wild rider with shield and throwing spear, 1 Crebain for that insane mobility. Warband 2 is Vrasku with 6 Uruk-hai warriors with crossbow, 6 Uruk-hai warriors with pike. Warband 3 is Gorulf Ironskin, 7 warriors with pike and 1 with shield. 38 models, 9 might, 14 crossbow shots. Technically 13 crossbows, but obviously 14 shots.
Yeah. I sort of can't believe that this is back, as it were. Like,
Well, I'm quite interested to hear your guys' thoughts on it because, like, it's just pretty cookie cutter Isengard.
well, that's it, isn't it? Like, it feels like the only modification to this over like vintage Isengard from, fresh out of the oven years ago is that you take basically no shields. They're rocking 1/3 crossbows, almost 2/3 pikes with a couple of fast guys in there, and then taking the best heroes. I mean, like Lurtz is fine. Yeah, he's cool. I like his special rule. I think he maybe needs a little something more, but it's fine. I like
Yeah, the
Lurtz.
Fell Beast.
I'm a Lurtz enjoyer. I just think it's funny to me that this is so, like, all it kind of took was Assault on Helm's Deep being Giga Meta and then dropping off, and then Jay trying to recreate Assault on Helm's Deep using the bits of Isengard, like allying in the Witch King, or just running straight Isengard but using the slightly stronger heroes, so like using Vrasku, using Lurtz, using Gorolf, and then suddenly people have sort of, well, I mean, he's realised, but the rest of us are slowly realising that, oh, actually, Isengard's always been good, and I don't know why people don't play it.
This
I
is
think
Mum, we have a Mum, can we get some Assault on Helm's Deep? Honey, we've got Assault on Helm's Deep at home.
Yeah, this is the Assault on Helm's Deep at home, but it's got a Crebain, it's got
Yeah, it's
Vrasku.
good. Yeah.
Doesn't have a ballista, but it didn't seem to stop him. What I would say about this is, I think this is good specifically because it's like a response to D6 being good in a way.
Yeah.
Because you've got the crossbow spam, and it means that other people using strength 4, so for example, Morannons and such, now don't get any benefit for their strength 4 against your D5 army.
Yeah.
Smart. I think if elf shooting or Dale shooting or something was high meta, or like knights were big meta, this would struggle because it's got nothing that you can put in front of spam strength 3 shots. But that's not really the meta we have, is it? So well done, Jay. I think this is good.
I really rate Gorolf Ironskin. I think he's an absolutely fantastic choice.
Yeah,
I don't think that's a secret
dope,
to
isn't
anyone. Yeah.
Vrasku's always been rock solid as well. It's the classic that the game's always been a bit of a pendulum, particularly in the sort of the modern era of it, where either defense 5 or defense 7 become the popular things, and then you end up pivoting that where you go from strength 4. Well, if defense 7's popular, that doesn't matter, so you go into strength 3, which then brings defense 6, and then suddenly it starts to pivot back again. You go, right, well, I'll go defense 5, strength 4. And so maybe if this starts to become popular and people catch on to Isengard being sort of actually pretty reasonable again, we'll see more dwarves roll back out and the wheels spin once again. and
Yeah.
defense 7 will become more popular.
Exactly.
But right now, when strength 3 and defense 6 is everywhere, Isengard are looking pretty tidy, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. It's nice to, as I've already said, you know, it is year of the Acharya again. It is nice to see a less meta list. Isengard, I've always thought it's pretty mid, doing really well.
Well,
clearly, my opinion's incorrect.
I think what really is crossbows. I don't think it's
Yeah.
necessarily Isengard. I think the crossbows are the deck. Although another thing is, Dragon Emperor sort of reveals the truth. The one true god is pikes.
Yeah.
Like this is the pike agenda, and actually strength 4 pikes. There's nothing else that can do that. Kind of goes hard actually.
I prefer salmon personally, but pikes are good as well. Woohoo! So yeah, moving on from that list. So we had a pretty comprehensive analysis of the 600 point meta a couple of episodes ago. So obviously expecting the top of the tournament, we would think, you know, it's going to be Hunter Orcs, it's going to have the Goblin Mercenaries allied in. Maybe it'll be Lake Town, maybe not. First place, Jakob Krokmal. I can never quite remember if I'm pronouncing that correctly. I believe I am. He has taken Variags of Khand, and you've got to card it to him because he absolutely smashed the field, mowed them down like a lawnmower. So his first warband, he had a Candish King, a Candish Chariot, with one Candish Warrior with a bow, 2 Candish Horsemen, a Candish Charioteer with a bow, and warband 2, Candish Chieftain with Chariot, 4 Candish Horsemen, and then that twice more. Total of 20 models, 8 might, 20 bows, and a disgusting amount of chariots. That's 5 chariots.
Yeah, that's a deceptively shooty list as well, I would say.
Yeah, I would say so.
Because every Candish hero comes with a bow, even the king. Like he's got one. Look at you can see him there. He's got it in his hand, looking like a boss. And also underrated rule of the chariots means you can move 10 and still fire, which is funny.
They say stable platform. If you've ever seen a film with a chariot in it, you know it's a very bumpy ride.
Well, I mean, historically, that is how chariot warfare worked. They did, they were mostly for archery.
All right, time team, calm down.
But I mean,
the king's got supreme control over his chariot, though. Look, he doesn't even have to hold on to reins, and it's perfectly stable.
It's just power of the mind.
What an absolute legend. It's got a big banner effect from the king. 6-inch banner on a big 60mm base is pretty cheeky. It means that a lot of your horsemen and charioteer or chieftains will be getting rerolls. Doesn't have a banner, but that doesn't actually matter because it's veto and none of the day one scenarios had the banner points in, so that's never going to be a problem. And like I said, 20 shots, they hit on 4s or 5s if you've moved, but as any Riders of Rohan player will tell you, the fact that you have or Rivendell Knights actually, the fact that you have a horse is essentially like always having it in the way, because it's like, they might kill your horse and that's annoying, but it's still most shooting is only a 1 in 3 chance to kill your horse. And if they do, you've still got a warrior, you've still got an archer who's going to be wandering around the battlefield, being a little pain in the ass, and it's not helped to break you, it's not done any of that stuff.
Yeah, it's not a model off the table, is it?
Exactly, yeah. They can go sit on a back objective and be annoying and be a problem. And I really like it. I think he, like me, picked a list that was going to go well into D4, which the reason for that being that Chariot Charge, when they hit anything, they do 2 strength 4 hits, and that means against a D4 model, there's 3/4 chance that they kill it. So Hunter Orcs go down like a sack of spuds against these things. My Rangers would have got absolutely ground underfoot. I'd actually have been really interested to see how that would have gone, because I probably would have only got about 1 round of shooting before he got on me because of marching and whatnot. But crazy versatile list, actually. Talking to him about scenarios was super fascinating because it's very, very maneuverable. Everything there is move 10 apart from the one warrior. Obviously, the chariots have a limitation on their moving arc. They can only go 45 to either side. But then, and they can only turn every, like, I think it's 3 inches.
It is 3, yeah.
Yeah. But they're very, if you have a good plan in mind, they're still very, very fast and can be maneuverable. And they also access some very wacky tech, which is that if you are playing a scenario where you have to end it on 25% and you're in a winning position, for example, recon, you can just run over your own models to force a game end, which is extremely entertaining. If you've ever seen that happen, the Candish King can order all of his cavalry line up in front of him, and then he just mows them down under hoof like a terrible tyrant. It's hilarious.
A real show of strength, yeah.
It's why it's
And
what
you
people like
you
Jasmine Tetley were infamous for the Assault on Helm's Deep, and why it got initially nerfed because of the bomb to end the game early, and Black Riders willing themselves out by casting spells to end the game early. Doing that, but with extra steps, I guess.
I can just see that like horrifying look of realization on your opponent's face when you're like, okay, all of these riders are going to dismount, and you're like, oh my god, this guy's a lunatic. What's he doing? This chariot's going to pivot. Oh my god, no!
They're all lying on their swords. I mean, it's funny. I think any situation where you can force end a game with your opponent having literally zero input is somewhat troublesome for the game. But I think it's funny in this context.
Yeah, this isn't too problematic.
We're not going to see Variogs of Cand everywhere. Jakob is an absolutely phenomenal player, but I think the pools helped him. He got some good matchups on the way. I did get to see him absolutely eviscerate Adam Siren's Hunter Orc list. Like it got to do exactly what it was built to do. And he had a nice run up to the win. Not to detract from him at all. Like you can't just go win a tournament with Cand, and it's not something that anybody could do. He just absolutely nailed it, didn't he? And he looked like he enjoyed every single game as well. I knew, you would never expect Jakob to not do well at a tournament. I don't know if he truly thought he would win the event with this, but he just had a look of glee on his face in every single game.
I think of the top 8 lists, the 2 that would have given this the most trouble were the dwarves, because again, dub 2 strength 4 is like, well, fishing for 6s, boy. And then if you win a roll off against it, it gets pinned and swamped by angry boys. And I think probably Riders of Theoden. I think Riders of Theoden is much more flippy, but Riders of Theoden could handle this. If you get the right combination of priorities and roll offs, you could definitely pin down 2 chariots and then break them. And then as soon as you've taken out a couple of chieftains or the king, this list starts to get a lot less scary. In that context, Jakob would definitely know better than to allow that to happen. But obviously, Ed also would know that's what he needs to do. It's not so simple. He'd be praying that he can out horses and stuff.
That's my biggest regret of the GP, is not seeing that match happen, because I think it would have been absolutely incredible.
It would have been fun to watch for sure. What I would say is the finale of the whole thing. I mean, do you want to describe it, Will? Because it was fantastic.
Yes. So Jay and Jakob made it to the lofty heights of the final table, playing for the big boy Smaug, and they vetoed into hold ground. And I didn't get to see all of the game because I was starting to sort of usher people into packing up and doing all of the logistics. But I remember coming over about halfway through, and there was half a Candish army sat in the middle of the board doing nothing, and some chariots just mercilessly running over these poor Isengard models. And it didn't seem like Jay was winning his fair share of the roll-offs. But then I come back towards the end of the game, and the only 2 models left on the table are Lurtz and the Candish King. And it turns out that the game just would not end on a 1 or a 2, and everything had fled. And it was literally down to those 2 models. And Jakob was fortunate enough to come out on top. But I don't think I've ever seen a finish to a top table game like that in the 10 years I've played.
Yeah, I mean, it was absolutely incredible. Fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
Like, I thought they'd already finished the game. I finished my game just in time to witness the end of it. I thought they'd already finished the game because they were sort of appearing to play, but all the models that had been in the middle, I thought they'd packed up. They'd all gone. And I was like, all right, okay. I assume Jakob won because I'd looked over there and seen a load of canned in the middle, and because it was hold ground and Jay won priority on the first turn. Obviously, Jakob is wringing his hands in glee because that means his chariots, unlike most things, because they don't technically charge, you can come on the first turn and do absolute monstrous things to your opposition. They can all come on, they can all charge, essentially running stuff over, and they can all do heroic combats and all sorts of nonsense. It's horrible if they want to. But then by the end, it's like, oh, something funny has happened, something crazy. Absolutely iconic, and Jakob went on to win, which is probably fair given how he started the round, but it would have been extremely funny if he'd managed to lose from that position. Just
I don't
down
think he'd
to
have found it
crazy
as
courage.
funny. But,
Probably not. I think that's why I'm happy. I'm obviously happy that he won because he's on my team, and obviously I'm happy to see him do well. But I think that would have been extremely funny. Payback for being so confident after losing the first turn priority.
Yeah, one thing I did observe over the weekend, because there was two can lists. There was a 7 City lad called Greg, that ran very similar. He had a couple more riders and one less chariot, I believe. And he didn't do too badly either. He's not played a huge amount of events before, but he's a pretty good player, and he didn't do too badly. But one thing that I observed across the best part of 14 games that I got to see was most players were, when they did win the fights against the chariot, they were desperately trying to throw attacks up over the defensive bulwark. So when striking in combat, if you want to hit the rider, I believe it's a 5+, you have to get over to have a swing at the rider. And I honestly think that I'd have just been having a crack at the chariots themselves. Their defense 7 and 3 wounds, they're a little bit tougher to take down. But there was just a few key moments across the games that I got to see where people had a pretty reasonable dice pool, and then they were just dividing the attacks that they had through the nature of the split, and just weren't able to convert either way. And maybe Jay did get to do that with his heroes because they're strength 5 as well. So it's a pretty good shout to go for the chariot. But I think even with the Hunter Orcs and stuff, when they did get to fight and they did beat them, I think I'd have just been swinging for the chariots, because once they go, the army really doesn't have too much to stop you. Food for thought, if nothing else. And maybe I'm barking up the wrong tree, but I think I'd have been tempted to go, do you know what? I'm just going to go for the chariots and see if I can bust them down, especially if I've got heroes with some might points and stuff.
What I'm trying to work out is it says chariots can't be knocked prone by sorcerous blast or call winds, but can you bash them? Because
probably.
Because you can bash Radagast off his sleigh, which is always a funny one. Obviously, I know the Iron Hill's chariot can't be bashed, but that's a funny potential thing. Just cheeky prone them and get it all sorted, or use a monster to hurl or something.
Yeah, I mean, you can definitely hurl them, and I know that's pretty wild. With that big fat base.
Yeah, I heard a tale told to me of a dweller hurling a Candace chariot through some chariots. He lost the game with his Moria, but that sounds funny to me.
The greatest deed a dweller in the dark has ever done, probably.
I would imagine so, yes.
The only story anyone's ever told about a dweller in the dark that was positive.
But yeah, this list is great. If it was significantly cheaper to buy from Games Workshop, maybe we'd see more of it. This is an 800-point list that if I could load into the Matrix and have it arrive on my doorstep perfectly painted and it would never chip, is absolutely an army that I would own. But there's a lot of factors as to why I won't. But it is a competitive list. It's essentially Rohan, but a little bit better. I really, really like it.
Yeah, I mean, it is. I think it probably has a limit of its certain level. I know Jakob doesn't think it works above 600. I'm sure it could, but I think this is probably a real sweet spot for it as a pure. It's basically, like you say, turbo riders of Rohan style.
Yeah.
Rohan.
One thing that it really has going for it is 600. And I'm sure Jakob would attest to this. Is the great undoing of canned is magic, because if you get to compel one of those chariots, you get to have a lot of fun with them, and you see very little to no magic at 600 points.
Yeah.
Outside the the Witch King here and there as a leader. And I'd be interested to know if Jakob faced any magic at all over the weekend.
I don't think so.
Yeah, so which means that you get to play with your toys. I know I played Jake Rawson 2 years ago at Reading, and that was only 500 points. But I had Lake Town Saruman, and he had Canned with Chariots, and essentially I just got to have Chariots for the entire game, and there wasn't really much he could do to stop me, and that would have made a very different event for Jakob. And maybe that's why it's the 600 points to cap. It's not necessarily this list; it's the list that it faces.
I think that's probably a good point to wrap up on the chariots. I did very briefly have a little graph on that we looked at previously on the 600 point meta. I think the important thing to take away from this is that there is a lot of D4 in this, D4 and lower. Yeah, we're not going to dwell too much longer on this one because we're already running slightly over, and we don't want to turn into a 2 or 3 hour podcast. I mean, who would do that? So questions and comments from our lovely viewers and listeners. Firstly, Henry Britton, loving the podcast, guys, and thanks for the kind words. You're very welcome, Henry. Thank you to you for running your charity stream and just being a generally lovely guy.
Good lads.
Yeah, shout out Atomic Cards lot, lovely people. Talking of correction, Chris Bunce, it was his first display board that we shouted out. I must be thinking of a different Chris, so I will take that one on the chin. That was entirely my fault. I would still say he's the best display board maker in the GBHL way, so live with that. Grandpa Gabe says, can confirm that Calman's list was indeed a beauty after getting curb stomped by it first game of the tournament. This was a 750 point list, which was Gilgalad and Lendil with Kierden support, which basically came second at
some high elves.
Yeah,
I think so. Yeah, I think it was an 80.
Yeah, with absolute romp apparently for him. So nice to hear it. Lovely to see Gilgalad doing well. Oh, I can't see that. It's underneath my.
Morrison's online might have some as well. Says Michael Haskell.
I have no idea what this is in reference to. Sorry, Michael.
They probably
I'm sure
do.
they do. I'm sure they do. They've got a very comprehensive selection. Fat Hobbit Gaming. Shout out Ian Smith. Always good to hear your sultry voice, Stephen. You're very welcome. Great to see Jordan's beautiful face. Not sure what that's referring to. And how many interns are we going to get through at the end of the year?
We'll keep track.
Yeah, we've actually had to get rid of the intern. You won't be seeing him anymore. Don't ask any further questions, please.
Jordan was going to be on this podcast, but he got too sleepy and went to bed.
Yeah.
Weak, frankly.
Yeah. How dare he? Stuart McLean with an absolute stonker of a comment. Lots of stuff going on here. Last year, who won a GBHL 100 with the least meta or weakest list? I was going to look at it and try and work it out.
Weakest list? I mean, I guess you could say a pure Ministerial with Boromir isn't exactly meta. It certainly wasn't at the beginning of the year.
It was that Ben Haslam.
It was Ben Haslam, yeah. The season opener. Let me just have a quick mental rundown. You can do another question, or the next part of this while I have a quick.
Who can get Jay on the blower to get some needed magic-related FAQs? We don't actually want Jay to answer any further magic-related FAQs after what he did with Black Dart, to be perfectly honest. We were all playing it one way, and then suddenly he goes, no, it's going to be this way. And it's like, well, Jay, you've been playing it this way for years, so...
You're right, we are all wrong.
Yes, thanks, Jay.
It's not putting on blast too much.
No, shout out Jay Clay. We do actually all love you. You know, you get a bit of stick, but you know, you maintain our game very well. Thank you. Is Witch King Sully going to get a nerf in February? Hopefully. Not for Dave's sake.
I'm not.
I don't think it will.
I don't think it will either. I'm curious to see if it will, but I don't think it will. Also, to comment on that, I haven't used it for several months at this point. Just to throw that out there.
Spoken like a true addict.
Yeah.
I can stop anytime I want. Thank you very much, Elliot.
Best army to counter Hunter Orcs and Lake Town at 500 to 600 points. I
Varag
refer
you
you
can.
to the
Next.
previous slide, my friend.
Easy.
So Dave, had you had to think about the least meta or weakest GBHL 100 list
Hmm.
winning?
It's just so many. There was a lot of like crossbows and AOL and stuff, which obviously doesn't quite rock up these days. I think probably the least meta would be the list that Jakob won City of Kings with, which was a hero mash with 6
Yes.
models.
Yeah.
It was 2 big eagles, Aragorn, Boromir, Legolas, and a Sentinel, and it's like that's not meta. It's decent, and it was a good choice with the scenarios being fixed the way they were, but it's definitely not meta.
Yeah.
Until David Nixon wins with his mighty Wall Suppliers and Guards.
Yeah.
That was pretty cool to see.
Shout out David Nixon. Matt L2K6 says it was 29 models total, 25 warriors, 4 heroes. This is in reference to the King's Champion list. Yes, our intern has been executed summarily for his transgressions, and we have gotten rid of him. Don't worry. Next comment. Oh, I shouldn't have moved that down there. Hey ho, folk. This is from Tim Elwes. I took 4 Sentinels to Hull at 500 points and 9 Sentinels to Banger at 715 points.
Wow.
Absolute Giga Chad.
That's amazing.
Fun list to play, very much underrated. However, absolute junk at contest, mainly because of Legolas. My second favourite Legolas model after the one of him with his leg on a rock. Yeah, that is quite a cool sniping pose. I like that one as well. I think, is that Warg Attack Legolas, or is it Defenders of Helm's Deep?
It's not Defenders of Helm's Deep, it's just a
that
classic.
It's a really nice model. Dan Hawkins, why does canned need to be nerfed? Yeah, clearly chariots are too strong. I reckon we need to get rid of them entirely.
Struggle to get through all those spiders of yours, Danny, that's why.
Yeah, that's true actually. Spiders would counter it massively. Reroll
Yeah, if you play an 800 point spider army into the 600 point can, it would walk all over it, mate.
Yeah, climb all over the chariots, I reckon.
Literally.
Yeah. And one final comment from David Clubbers. How many chariots is too many chariots?
6 apparently.
Yeah.
5 was just right. That's why Greg didn't pull it off, because he only had 4. What jump?
That's it. Mid.
Yeah, personally, if I don't see at least 5 chariots, I'm not pulling it off. So,
Way.
So thanks everyone for listening. Just before we go, Will, do you have anything to plug? Any shops or patrons or anything?
Oh, I think I could think of a couple of things. We've got plenty of events coming up this year. We've got Gates of Gondolin in May, which is going to be another 100-pointer. So that'll be fun. I'll do something interesting in the rules pack, as I always do. We've got mixed doubles in August, where you and your buddy, I think it's just shy of 400 points each, and everything is green, so good and evil. Come up with any sort of janky nonsense that you like. And you can also buy a doubles ticket for that, or you can buy a singles ticket and then be slapped with an opponent for the weekend. And I really embrace the chaos of it. And then my Patreon, Will's Champions, which is, I don't care what anyone says, the second best title after any heroics, where
Well,
I
hey.
essentially help you become a better, more competitive player. We look at list building, we look at all the different scenarios and break them down as to sort of how to go about winning them, what lists are doing really well at the moment and how to counter them and keep that meta wheel spinning, and general sort of chit chat, hobby advice, etc. So if you'd like to be better at the game, give me a sub and I'll see what I can do for you.
Yeah. Thank you very much again, Will, for coming on. Pleasure to have you once again. Nice to have someone other than Dave who actually knows what they're talking about. And obviously, thank you everyone for listening. Thank you, Elliot, for talking about the Rohan list.
You're very welcome, Stephen.
And we will catch you on the next podcast. Now I just need to work out how to pause this.
Why do you say that I can't wing it then? You always make me read the slides.